Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another new episode of the Eccentric CEO podcast. I'm your host, Aman. In the last episode, we talked about the world of investing in fine dining, 3 Michelin star restaurants. Okay. And interestingly, today we are again talking about restaurants because it's such a broad industry and there's so many things you can discuss. But we'll touch on restaurants from a completely different side, which is the world of fast food franchises and how the nature of fast food is changing in incredible ways, right? And we'll dive into everything from the economics of fast food to the latest innovations happening both in the dining room and inside the kitchen, right, or behind the curtain. And so to that end, I would like to introduce you all to a truly new, fascinating, world-class guest, Steve Bigari, who has been a constant pioneer in the fast food business for like 2 decades. Is that right?
Yes, Aman, it is.
And he's currently the CEO and chairman of Synq3, which we'll talk about shortly as well. Steve, it's so exciting to finally have you here.
Well, it's great to meet you, Aman, and thanks so much. I would say that we've stretched beyond really fast food and into
Yeah.
casual dining and sit down restaurants. I don't think we'll have many Michelin 3-star restaurants because we deal almost entirely in convenience.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think the audience would find it fascinating to learn that the first time I heard about Steve Bigari was many, many years ago. And you might find this interesting. If you go to the typical drive-through fast food restaurant, like let's say a drive-through McDonald's or a drive-through KFC, today, now in this decade, often the order that you place when you're entering the drive-through is actually not taken by somebody who's inside that establishment, but somebody sitting in a call center many hundreds or maybe thousands of miles far away from that physical location. Somebody in a call center who's taking that your order, confirming it, and sending it back to the kitchen where somebody prepares it and gives you your meal. And interestingly, my guest here, Steve, was one of the very first people in the world who actually introduced that concept. The concept that instead of a human being in a window at a drive-through, the order is taken digitally to reduce the error rate and make it more efficient, also make it more cost-effective, because he was the owner and I think you were running like 12 McDonald's franchises at the time.
Yes.
So quick question on that: did it make sense for you? I mean, I do have a hunch that it did make more sense for you to do it that way because you had 12 different franchises, and not because you had like, if somebody had just one franchise, if they're just starting out, do you think that system that you came up with, the one you invested in, it would still make sense for an individual owner today?
Well, Aman, that's a great question, and I think it really depends because the technology has come so far. We
Yeah,
actually took our first call center order in a drive-through 20 years ago,
yeah.
September the 12th of 2002. And what I can tell you is the team then, my co-founder Matt Fabier and many, many others, really created something out of nothing, and that technology was exceptional, but with the advent of AI and the acceleration of digital technologies, voice and audio, it's a different world today. So I think it's extensible into individual restaurant brands to scale. An
Yeah.
operator within a big brand, for example, it would be fine. An independent operator with a small number of restaurants, I don't think it would work. But it also extends to the phone, the car, and the Internet of Things. So I think it really integrates in an entirely digital solution suite.
Yeah, now actually, you actually have companies which can, and of course, one of them is yours, which we'll talk about later. But there are many, like the technology has evolved and will become matured and become packaged off the shelf. So you just have to plug things together and build that. Whereas in your case, 20 years ago, I think you were looking for a company for like 6 years. Tell us about that story. Like, how did that first call center come into existence, and all the things you had to do to get there?
Well, it was funny because it was really born out of my frustration with imperfection. I hate things that aren't right, especially a drive-through that doesn't move. And a great competitor of mine, Rob Taylor from Chick-fil-A, really the only place I could beat Rob was in the drive-through. So I started
Ah,
focusing
I see.
and I looked at ways that we could continue to enhance the experience and eliminate friction. And I was working with Tom Ryan, who led the innovation team at McDonald's at the time, and he was kind of reinventing production. And in the process of that, I started to see some different ways of thinking about parallel ordering, multiple ways to order. So I really wanted to create a triple lane drive through. I had done a lot of work with two speakers in various configurations, and I really wanted to be able to handle three, four infinite order points and parallel order points, so one wasn't dependent on the other. If you think about drive-through 1.0, it is a linear solution,
Yeah.
and the key to breaking free of that is coming up with a parallel solution where no one is dependent on the previous. So we looked at, the first priority was getting something into the speaker that we could talk to the guest with. And really, I visited dozens of companies and basically told them to take a speakerphone and stick it in. I wasn't very smart. I'm an engineer by training, but a hamburger guy, is my background. So I really didn't have a great deal of knowledge in this area.
Mhm.
And many, many companies told me that this was impossible. There's nothing that could be done. And then I hired this kid out of college, Matt Favier, who wound up being my co founder. And one day in a meeting, he said, I can figure this out. And many, many months later, in a very elaborate process that looked like a giant mousetrap in the back of the room, Matt was able to pull it off 20 years ago, which is really exceptional. And the rest is kind of history. I knew from that point that automation would be the key to scaling this.
I see. So, you touched on an interesting theme there. You talk about drive-through 1.0, that's one. And you talked about that your goal was really to make your drive-through just make more drives to the drive-through, right? Because you were competing with Chick-fil-A. And that actually is a good segue into the beginning of our actual interview, which is to talk about the reality of running a single like fast food joint or drive through whatever, right? What are the forces you have to deal with? What does drive through 1.0 mean? What does it mean to compete with a different fast food establishment down the road? What factors can you compete in, whether it's in marketing or, I mean, Chick-fil-A and McDonald's, they both have similar brand recognition. So talk about what was really the ethos, that the environment in which you were making all these different decisions. What were the forces going like that affected your whole strategy from the beginning?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. I think the most important thing is there's nothing convenient about a line. So friction
Okay.
is the biggest challenge in all aspects of restaurant operations, I believe. Um, when you talk about the elimination of friction and therefore the multiplication of convenience, that's really a huge factor driving the market today. It's the ability in drive through and in frankly other areas of the restaurant operations to become more convenient. And there's a
Okay.
host of factors that really the restaurant operators are faced with,
Okay.
from staffing shortages, the pandemic, disintegrated technologies, disparate ways of interacting with the guest, a very competitive and complex ecosystem. All those things attribute.
So let's take the life cycle of a single order, right? I drive into the drive-through because I'm feeling about having some McDonald's today, and let's begin the conversation there. What happens on my side and what happens internally inside that physical establishment?
So in drive-through 1.0,
Yeah.
there's an employee in the restaurant who has a headset on, much like
Okay.
yours. They can hear the guest, they interact with the guest, they place the order on the point of sale terminal. That gets relayed to the kitchen. The kitchen produces the order comes up to an expediter, the expediter bags the order, puts it on the tray. You pay, you get some confirmation of what's in the bag, a receipt. In the perfect world, you get that handed to you, and you're on your way. It's correct. It's
Okay.
hot. You're happy. It's fast, accurate, and friendly.
Okay, so that's drive to 1.0, and then you are now competing. The next day, let's say Chick-fil-A opens up across the door, and now I have to think about whether I go to McDonald's or I go to Chick-fil-A. Both of them offer the same experience as above, and so now you, who owns that McDonald's franchise, that particular McDonald's franchise, start thinking about what do I do to get Aman to get him in my driveway versus Chick-fil-A's driveway. Now, beyond the preference of which menu I want to eat, let's talk about on the operational side and the waiting in line part. Like, how can you reduce my waiting time so I know that, hey, Chick-fil-A is going to be like 5 minutes and this one's going to be 2 minutes. I know where I'm going because I'm in a rush or something like that. How do you get me down from whatever the waiting time was to whatever it's possible to have?
Yeah, it's such a great point, and there are so many factors that
Yeah,
figure into that. At
yeah.
the end of the day, we want three simple things:
Okay.
fast, accurate, and friendly. Of course, the
Mhm.
quality of the food is essential too, so I'm going to put that off to the side.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, in order to deliver fast in a linear environment, you're always dependent upon the person in front of you. So drive-through
Okay.
1.0 is always going to be challenged. Now, we have some tools that we can use in that in multi-lane with a traditional drive-through, so employees on the inside of the restaurant. That worked for many years, and you see Chick-fil-A, you mentioned them, bringing that 1.0 to really 1.99, the epitome today of where that linear system can go. Multiple people outside, multiple order points, multiple payment points. So they make it significantly better than what it was. And, but it's limited by the guest interaction, the technology.
What's the multiple person, like how does that become 1.0 to 1.99 and a lot of people that are listening might be not from the United States, so they might have only seen one kind of drive through where you enter the car and then there's just one person that you talk to and then you go on. Like, how do you parallelize that within that 1.0 environment?
Great. So a traditional lane has one speaker
Yeah.
and a single individual talking to a single individual in the restaurant.
Yes.
And that individual is typically doing multiple tasks, so it's very difficult for them to get it friendly. We deploy tools that have been used for many years, like customer order displays and things like that, that make that less of an issue. And then the more challenging part is, how does that stay friendly? Because
Mhm.
that employee is stressed, they're typically short staffed, they can't answer right away, they have multiple people trying to engage with them, someone at the window, someone on the speaker. So we want to eliminate that and make this smooth and easy. So the
Okay.
next step is to create a parallel environment where you
Yeah.
put a speaker in front of or behind the other speaker or to the side of. Obviously,
Oh, I see.
the speaker to the side is far better. Two is
Yeah.
better than one. Now, each guest has an independent transaction, a parallel transaction.
Mm.
So the next logical extension of that for us, if two are good, three are better. So
Yeah.
we put three in line. Well, once you get there, there's no technology that can keep that going. The staff in the restaurant can't handle it. So you have to connect that to a call center and aggregate those calls. The challenge there is you would need tens of thousands of people to run a large enterprise brand over lunch, and those people could only work for about 3 minutes. Or,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 3 hours a day,
Yeah.
and it's just not it's not practical. So it's taken us about 20 years to figure out, first, how to integrate automation into this ecosystem. Second, how to integrate digital and other aspects of ordering payment into the ecosystem. And then third, how to make that easy for the restaurant to execute and seamless. And that is, we're in the process of doing all those things as we speak.
What is the economics of this situation. Like, let's say I have, you know, or you can talk about what numbers, like what numbers you have if you don't have, let's say if you just have one speaker, there's one round, the car comes in, you talk, and then you drive over to the other end and you correct your order. How does having parallel, like, lanes, or so to speak, like, of course you multiply that by two and then by three, but is that really like how it works, or are we missing something here?
No, at the end of the day, capacity begets volume. If you
Yeah.
build it, they might come. If you don't, they definitely won't. So,
Hmm.
for instance, when you have a single speaker that's throttled by the guest, the technology, your ability to answer all of those things, you can do successful restaurants do 60, maybe the high end 90 cars an hour. Take let's say their average check is $10. That's
Yeah.
$600 to $900.
Yeah.
The so that's step one.
Yeah.
Step two is to create multiple order points that are unique and personalized to that guest experience today. So as you do that, you double and triple that number. But more importantly, you give the guest at each one of those order points a much more customized experience. You have data to understand what they're doing and what they want, what they might purchase. It makes it easier for you to upsell them. So, on average, we see a double digit improvement in check when we take that activity out of the restaurant. When McDonald's first started playing with kiosks, I used to joke with folks and say, this kiosk upsells 50% of the time. Do you understand why? And people would think that I was going to have some prolific revelation. And it was because they ask 100% of the time. And the point is, this is a game of first asking and second data. So knowing if you happen to know what that guest prefers, that's a game changer. That
Yeah.
in general, let's say we can take that 60 cars to 140 cars and we
Okay.
can raise the check by $11. The math is pretty compelling, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Well, now when you get into a triple lane environment or literally a completely parallel environment,
Hmm.
you're only limited by the amount of food you can produce and hand out from a window. Well,
Yeah.
if you can take the ordering activity off of the lot, which we've done in our phone ordering, if you
Hmm.
can take the payment activity off of the lot and do it ahead of time and synchronize the arrival of
Mm.
that product with the guest, so production times become much less a problem, a challenge, and quality becomes greatly enhanced because you can produce food just in time for the guest's arrival. This is just as true in a carry-out scenario or a delivery scenario as it is in a drive-through scenario. So all those factors are at play.
And there's also the factor that you have to. I mean, it's a physical environment, right? So you can, when you go from one lane to parallel to triple and so on, you have to make some shifts on the, like, outside, and how you actually get the cars in, and where they pick up the food and all. So that's also kind of an investment. But of course, at scale, when you're doing like hundreds of cars every day, then that math makes sense. And so there's 2 points, right? There's get more cars through, and then when each person gets a more personalized conversation, you can upsell them and increase the order size. So that's three times the cars ordering 1.5 times the food. In a way.
Yeah, so to put a fine point on drive-through 1.0, with the extension of this, we went from about 150 cars a lunch hour average to all my restaurants we're doing over 300 cars.
Wow.
And
Okay.
the record we were able to attain in 2006 is 374 cars in 1 hour
Wow.
with about a 10 to 15% increase in check. So, as you might imagine, that became very productive. But that's just the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just drive through 1.0. The future, you highlighted a number of barriers to what drive through 2.0 is because that's difficult to scale. That's expensive. It requires time, effort, energy, planning. The beauty of 2.0 is its disruptive innovation. It really leverages the new technology that's available to us.
I see. So let's talk about, inside the, or kind of, let's go back to the conversation where we were talking about, I think, what people have to deal with when they're running a restaurant, right? You have, especially right now in this current environment. You have employee shortages, you have, and the ones you do have, you have to pay them more. And then what are all the internal operational problems that restaurants have, uh, and what are the costs of those problems?
You bet. It's first of all, it's highly competitive. Second,
Okay.
it's very challenging to hire, train, and retain people. So your most valuable asset is very difficult to come by and very
Mhm.
difficult to keep. So that makes retraining an issue and staffing an issue. So there's a governor, as it were, in the restaurant throttling that volume. The employees are stressed out. Remember, we talked about the three keys: fast, accurate, and friendly. Well,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to do in this environment. So, in that environment that's fraught with friction and challenges, it's very difficult to be excellent. And
Hmm.
what we want to do is create an environment where they can be excellent, and that drives all of our thinking in this area.
But so while doing research, I came across that the fast food business at its DNA, right? It's really about the what was pioneered by McDonald's with their speedy service system, right? Where it's kind of like the kitchen runs like an automatic clockwork like machine, and every person has one task or maybe two tasks at most, and it's pretty unskilled situation in general for the people involved. So now, so what I'm hearing now is that you have to train people, and all that stuff is a different aspect, especially when you've kind of removed the most training intensive part, which is handling people on the phone, right? That's that I would assume it's the most training intensive, where you have to teach people to be friendly and to be polite and upsell people and ask the right question, or maybe give them a script. Apart from that, like, what do you mean by training? Like, or I mean, for fast food, right? And of course, casual dining and stuff also kind of extends from that. But if you're only talking about fast food, is that a big thing, or are you more talking about in general with casual dining and other sit-in restaurants?
I think it's true of everyone. And so the restaurant operator has to work on those systems to make
Yeah.
food production simple, fast, easy, replicable, because quality is dependent upon that being scalable and easy to execute. Where we come in is we help bifurcate the tasks. So
Okay.
in restaurant staff, they can focus on one thing. And it's
Yeah.
much easier to be accurate and friendly when you're focusing on one thing. And I think that benefits every aspect of the operation. So the production team is doing one thing and they can focus on those tasks. The service delivery team is doing one thing. The order taking team is a combination of hybrid automation and humans that are typically off premise, and also engage the restaurant's digital suite in conjunction with those solutions to get more orders faster and better aligned with the guest arrival.
I see. I see. So give us an example. Let's say of when you have like if I have to take a video camera, take a snapshot of what actually happens in a restaurant these days with the employee shortages or Like, give us some anecdotes or some people that you talk to on a day-to-day basis. What are they telling you? What are their like? What are they saying? What words do they use?
Oh my goodness. If you take the roof off the restaurant and kind of take a
Yeah.
God's eye view of what's going on, it's a living, breathing ecosystem. And
Okay.
that is fraught with I don't people don't show up. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
have enough to run the restaurant today. The people who do show up are less reliable and they're more challenged. So it's just a snowball. They talk about this all the time. It's a snowball rolling down the hill, picking up steam because you have a limited number of very dedicated people. You put them in an environment that's incredibly challenging with guests who have become increasingly frustrated over the
Hmm.
past couple of years with the pandemic. And so there's a lot of pent up frustration, anxiety. You have all the tangential impacts. They talk about how, social media has pitted us against each other. So there's this anger and this frustration that's kind of just boiling underneath the surface that guests have. And that tends to come out. We see it on airlines. Our operators see it in restaurants. So if you put yourself in the shoes of that individual who's got to work in that restaurant, it's incredibly challenging. If you take a step up and you think about leading that restaurant, now you have a more complex, more challenging, more competitive environment that's incredibly frustrating. The beauty is the hope is really the integration of technology with people to
Hmm.
address some of these fundamental core issues.
What's the what? How have the margins in the in the fast food business, in the restaurant, or at least let's do this. Let's talk about the margins on food or in the food service industry for different categories of restaurants, right? And then let's talk about how they have changed over the 20 years that you've been in that you've been pioneering this in this industry, and then we will get to the technology part of how we change that.
Well, I have to go back to one of my heroes, my partner in McDonald's, Joe Johnson.
Okay.
He owned a half of a restaurant with me back in the day, and he is truly a hero of mine. Today, he owns a couple of dozen restaurants in McDonald's. He's one of the finest operators I've ever met. And what if Joe were here, he would tell you that it's become exponentially harder to make as much money with a single rooftop. That the challenges are the inflation of food cost, the
Okay.
inflation of labor cost, the increasingly competitive environment,
Hmm.
um, the cost of all the technologies that you have to bring to the restaurant. So all of those things kind of conspire to make the margins ever tighter, and it becomes a real challenge for the smaller chains, right? So you're making less money doing more work over time, and that's a particular challenge for all restaurants across the spectrum, across the globe today. People are becoming harder to find and more expensive across the world.
Like, give us some numbers on the margins, like the
Well,
some reference numbers, like just for a range.
I can simply tell you that an individual who had maybe 10 restaurants uh, 20 years ago
Yeah.
made an awful lot more margin than someone who
Like,
has
what does
a
awful
single
lot mean,
brand
Steve?
with 30 restaurants today.
Oh, interesting. So a person with 10 restaurants back in the day made much. And when you say, like, is that like
Yeah,
multiples,
it's
or is it like
3 to 4 times less money today, or I would say 20 years ago, an individual unit almost across the board was
for
three to
every
five
hundred
times
dollars
cost.
for every $100 that you made in previously with one establishment, let's say one establishment, for every $100 you make, if you have that same establishment today, right? How
25
what?
in the worst case, you're losing money today. In
Okay,
the
yeah,
best
of
case,
course.
$25 to $50. Best case.
Wow. So a 50%, at least a 50% reduction, because there are always people who are losing money in every industry. So we will
Yeah.
not count the ones. We'll just count at the top. Even at the top, if you're making $100 back then, you're making less than $50 today. Wow. And that's from one establishment. Okay. And so now we can finally get into, now that the listener, I hope, has some more like tangible like numbers in their head. Now we can talk about improving the situation, kind of continue that part of the discussion, right?
You bet.
And so you begin with, is there any innovation or any technological innovation that's happened in the kitchen itself, in getting the food once the order is there? Like, let's start from the end to the beginning of the order, because the beginning of the order is the most complex part, right? Getting the person and the marketing, all that is much more involved. So let's talk about the end of the chain, which is getting the order and packaging it and putting it on the door, right? Has there been any innovation on that last mile, or the last part of that equation?
Okay, so I'm sorry. You want me to tackle
Start
the
from
back
the
of
end.
the
Yeah,
restaurant or the
start
front?
from the end of the order to the beginning of the order. Yeah.
Okay, so from the back of the house, there's
Yeah.
been monumental changes in
Mm.
people, process, and technology. I serve over 30 marquee restaurant brands, and those
Okay.
brands are alive today and surviving today because they've become very good with very little. So they've created processes that are simpler from the all the way back to supply chain. They've made the products more shelf stable, more predictable. They've worked on the arrival of those products. When they come
Hmm.
in, they've worked on the handling of those products, making it simpler, easier. The production techniques, tools, things like turbo chef ovens and double-sided cooking technologies have transformed everything. The ability to hold food, the ability to assemble food just in time for an order, the
Hmm.
communication between the order and the production it's night and day, and that helps a lot. Without that, I doubt a restaurant today would be able to survive.
That is interesting because, like, I mean, the restaurant, even if you look at 20 years ago, right? Compare that to what happened 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, right? Like, there's already like a lot of changes happening in the restaurant industry from 50, 60 years ago when McDonald's came out, and then, that, like, a lot of changes were already happening, and now you're saying that inside the kitchen, it's been even further, like, optimized, where
It's amazing.
every
It's
second.
amazing. These restaurant chains are doing remarkable things with technology and innovation and process to make restaurants safer. And now
Mm,
automation is also there's been an automation revolution. So 20 years ago, McDonald's pioneered robotics with an automated robotic crew helper, the fry machine, and the drink machine, and those have been limited and working very well for 20 years. Well, now great brands like Mizo and others are creating a multitude of robotics for the kitchen that really can assist the staff in production of food and delivery of food. Well, simultaneously, there's this new great awakening that my friend Ed Cardone, who really started U.S. Cyber Command, he was a roommate of mine at West Point, talks about centaurs, and
mm,
that's really the future of automation. The don't worry, it's not Skynet, it's not the Terminator. It's
mhm,
good. It's the combination of humans and AI and
mm,
robotics in an ecosystem that allows each of those subsystems to do what they do best. And so,
yeah,
as a consequence, I believe you'll see in the very near future, like now, this is being accelerated by the pandemic, by the labor shortage, by the
yeah,
inflation. It's all being accelerated. You'll see a better integration of those things to the benefit of all of them. And as a consequence of that, you'll see fewer people in the restaurants able to make more money because they'll be able to be more efficient. The restaurateurs, as a consequence, will also be able to expand their margins by leveraging that. But it's win win.
yeah,
The employees will win. I guess it's win win win. The employees
yeah,
will win by having less stress and making more
yeah,
money. The operators will win by selling more food, making more money, having less stress. And the
yeah.
customers will win because they'll get a fast, accurate, and friendly experience.
I see, and yeah, and that reminds me. I think in some establishments, I think a few in America where the restaurant is pretty much completely run by robots, right? I've seen a few examples of that. I think one in Massachusetts, in Boston, Massachusetts, and then I think there's one other somewhere else. I think in New York City, like, there's a restaurant which are completely. I mean, it's kind of a little bit gimmicky, but not completely. But they're actually run completely by restaurants. And then I've seen a lot of these examples in China, which has been doing a lot of these, experimentation with robot operated restaurants and so forth. And they use, like they use one kind of person for salads and stuff, and then they use another for, like, a robot for different part of the recipe and so forth. So I can see, like, robots are going to take over more and more of the kitchen, so to speak. When you look at the now, let's look at market penetration just on the kitchen side. We're still talking about the kitchens. When you talk about these new technologies, right, and you can see the change. There's always the bleeding edge, and there's the middle of the bell curve, and then there's the laggard, right? Where are we in terms of the adoption rate within the kitchen?
Awesome. So it depends on the technology. You pointed
Yeah.
out this group over here, the bleeding edge, those great innovators who are disrupting the industry and creating these completely automated restaurants. Then you have the folks who are just your Michelin restaurants who are like, we're no way, we're not doing that, but we're going
Uh-huh.
to stick to it. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, The fact is that great restaurant brands today are leveraging robotics to come alongside humans in an ecosystem that's going to become, it's going to move very quickly. For
Yeah.
example, you saw a recent article with featuring Brian Nichol from Chipotle, who's
Hmm.
talking about their new chip robot. And you'll notice that this doesn't, it allows the staff to do other things while the chips are made not to perfection. Think about that. Think about that. They're
Hmm.
made with the nuance of being slightly imperfect so that you will get that unbelievable quality in the
Hmm.
food without a human having to impact those chips. That's just one example of
Ah.
mainstream use of robotics. I think the next big thing is the ability to combine and synchronize people into that process. So now, because of technologies like we're using today, Zoom, etc., if you
Hmm.
think about the military or an automobile factory, how you can have engineers in one place
Hmm.
let's take an automobile factory and you'll see where the progression of this is going to go.
Yep. Yep.
Robotics
Yep.
works so well in a car factory because the OEMs have engineers right on site. And when
Yeah.
something goes wrong with the robots, the engineers can fix it. So they take a lot of those tasks. Well, the military has extended that in an amazing way to combine humans and automation. So, for example, with drones today, one pilot can handle multiple drones
Yeah.
because the AI handles the simple parts of the tasks.
Yep. Yep.
Airline,
Yep.
the same way. The airplane can basically fly itself. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get on a plane. I'm not saying you're going to get on a plane. I don't think that's going to happen. I had a very interesting conversation with the head of logistics at FedEx who told me that greater than 90% of their flights from end to end were automated today. And I asked him, when will we ever see planes without pilots? And he said, never. So,
We had interestingly, we had a guest in, I think, episode 8 or 9 or somewhere. They are actually building autonomous cargo, large autonomous cargo drones which have no pilots in them, for
yeah.
cargo so
Yeah,
far. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. You're not going to strap yourself onto a plane. Now, that plane could be end to end flown by a computer, but it's going to have a very qualified human who's going to be in there. Now, when you think about restaurants and not putting people at 30,000 feet, it's an awful lot safer. So
Yeah.
now, leveraging this kind of technology, for example, going back to the OEM example, you
Yeah.
could conceivably, when we're working at McDonald's, it's very specific. We tried to pioneer a new fry robot 20 years ago that would not just dispense the fries, but it would basket them, drop them, shake them, dump them, salt them. But the problem was the machine would break. Well, that's still going to happen today. But now with this technology, we could have a remote pilot sitting and getting tapped on the shoulder and say the fryer at Burger King number, and that screen comes up. The
Mm.
pilot could repair that in real time. I think that's, you're going to see that happen. We leverage that for order taking and payment,
Mm.
uh, predominantly using voice in that ecosystem. So we're on the front end of that. And then we leverage the key, the thing that's changed everything in the world today, people need to understand, are APIs. And think of APIs as a simple roadmap that tell technology what to do with the data. This, oh, look, Amon is coming back. Now, let's put this in the context of an order. Amon is back. I can tell that from any technology,
Mm.
geo technology, Bluetooth technology, cell phone
Yeah. Yeah.
technology, you name it. Amon is back. What is Amon like? Here's his previous order history. Hi, Amon. Welcome back. Want the same
Mm.
order you had last time? Yeah, but I'd like to add this and this and this to it. Okay. Well, now I know that you're a big fan of cheesecake
Yeah.
because of the data. Can I
Hmm.
get you a cheesecake? You add that on. Would you like to pay for that with your Visa ending in? No, I want to put a new card in. Use
Hmm.
my Amex. And all of this can be done in an automated fashion that can be backstopped by humans, making it easy. It's fast, frictionless. Remember those three things: fast,
Yeah.
accurate, friendly. Well, the
Yeah.
technology can improve all those areas. The friendly part, I'm not saying technology is more friendly than people. I'm saying that first and foremost, any guest who wants to talk to a human needs to be able to talk to a human. That's first and
Mhm.
foremost.
Yeah.
Second, that human is not distracted with a lot of mundane.
Mhm.
They have a specific purpose, like the drone pilot.
Yeah.
They come in for the last part of that, and they're a fixer. They can solve the problem, making the entire ecosystem more efficient, cheaper, better for everybody. Remember,
Yeah.
all three people have to benefit: the guest, the operator, and the employee.
I see. So now we're finally getting into the territory of the upstream, like when the order actually begins, right? Um, so we've had a lot of innovation in the restaurant kitchens, right? And that being said, I think it's going to take some time before those margins increase overall in the industry. We're still like I mean, it's not going to be accounting for that huge uh, at the moment, maybe, right? It's going to take some time for robotics to actually take over kitchens across the
Absolutely.
industry. But the easier sell or the easier way to increase those margins is not in the kitchen, which way you have to do a lot more like optimization. You need a lot more technical know-how and process know-how, operations know-how, but rather to increase the number of people going through your drive-through, right? Just simple as that, going through your drive-through.
You just nailed it, Amon. This is so simple. Business 101, restaurants 101.
Yeah.
Every number in the denominator in the P&L is revenue. So if you affect the labor line, if you affect the food line, if you affect the paper line or the advertising line, you affect one number.
Yeah.
If you affect the profit line, I'm sorry, the revenue line, that's the denominator on every line on the P&L. So you
Yeah.
magnify everything by focusing on the revenue. Remember what I said at the beginning. It's
Mhm.
the I call it the modified field of dreams. My friend Don Thompson, who I raised from a pup, who was the best CEO of McDonald's ever. No, Mike Roberts, I'm sorry. Don is just a hero of mine. And he was always using that field of dreams pitch. And I
Mhm.
told him, no, 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 Don, just because you build it, if you build it, they might come. If you
Mhm.
don't, they definitely won't. Meaning, if you build a drive through with 300 car capacity, it doesn't mean you're going to do 300 cars tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if you build one with 100 car capacity, you're never going to get to 300 cars. And
Yeah.
great leaders like that have really helped shape the industry for this moment, where now
Mhm.
all of these things can converge.
I see. So now we're finally getting into, how do you get more people? And so one example you mentioned was if you have more data on the customer and you have more touch points, you're sending them, there's always a line between spam and, being a good salesperson, being helpful, right? But let's say you find that balance, and then through digital technologies, this is the marketing. Let's start from the very beginning. There's the marketing budget, the brand building for the company, which all of these big players have, right? Um, as a small restaurant chain or a small restaurant, you don't have the marketing budget that McDonald's has, that you can reach your local community on Twitter every day or something. But you can also do something special, which McDonald's can't do for your particular community, right? So on the marketing field, I mean, for a good marketer who understands their community, I would say it's an even playing field. I don't know, what do you think about that particular, like, would you agree with that statement? Like, if I was a restaurant owner in a city of, let's say, 10,000 people, right, and there was a McDonald's chain and a Chick-fil-A right next door, I could do certain things like, hey, I know what my community really likes. I can offer them, like, hey, you know have a celebration at my restaurant, or, like, we have something special for this little festival that we celebrate as a community. Like, you can get people in out of, like, brand city loyalty or some of the local loyalty kind of things, right? Do you think, like, that actually moves the needle, or is it the high level brand building that, with the big $1 billion budgets, are the real, like, factors here? on
Listen,
that
I
on that
take
aspect. Yeah.
utmost confidence in independent operators. I've
Okay.
been blessed to know people like Rich Melman and Dave Lux who have shown that you can survive and thrive in this environment. I would tell you that's becoming increasingly difficult. Now, the
Mm.
good news is, as these technologies proliferate largely through the big brands, we see wonderful leadership coming out of diverse brands such as Chipotle and Applebee's and Noodles and Panda and just a bunch of brands who are
Yeah.
being very thoughtful and intentional about how they bring everything together in an entire ecosystem that I like
Yeah.
to call the 6 T's of digital transformation. As they do that, then they will create breakthroughs in technology that will allow the independent operator to leverage some of those things. In the short term, they become development of these things becomes incredibly expensive. So
Yeah.
there is going to be a culling of the less effective independent operators, and frankly, all operators who are less effective. There's going to be a culling. There already has been, and it's going to get worse. Now,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think everybody, the whole industry, will benefit from the rapid transformation driven by people, process, and technology. The integration of those three things. Technology being the key disruptor for the future.
Hmm. And so, yeah, I do agree. It's like, and I like that you use the word culling, because that is exactly what it feels like in the restaurant industry. All the people who are like, hey, my mom had this nice list of recipes, so I'm going to start a restaurant tomorrow, and I'm going to make $1 million from my mom's recipe. Like, okay, that's not exactly how it works. Like, you're entering one of the toughest, like, of and industries with one of the least margins possible, which is the food service industry. And if you have this one little restaurant, like, let's say a lot of for example, Chinese restaurants, find themselves in that predicament because it's an easy business to get started in if you have a little money lying around, or you can get a loan. But it's a really hard business to stay in and make money from, make a living from, right? Let alone profits, right?
Yeah,
Um,
well, just man, I can tell you straight up, I would never underestimate those people. As an entrepreneur, I
yeah.
can't tell you how many times people have told me, "I'll never happen. You can't do that." You know
Uh
what?
huh.
Don't test these people because they'll
Yeah.
figure it out. Now, and when they come out of the other side of that, what comes is very powerful, and that's also so this you talked about that curve and where
Yeah.
we are in the adoption. You have now big brands really pressing that. You have breakthrough operators really pulling that, and you have those of us in the middle, great technologists in the industry like Noah Glass from Olo and many others who are out there creating these new technologies that are able to magnify what an individual is able to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the benefit of having service providers like you, which can kind of level the playing field, right? Because you 20, like an operator like yourself 20 years ago had to find people to build things and design things and invest in the R&D, in fact, right, for that process to happen. And now a lot of these technologies are already packaged, they're off the shelf, and you can integrate them with a much lower investment, so you can get people. So let's talk a little about that. Let's talk about a little about what kind of products and services you can use, and what's not just current but also what's on the roadmap for the future. And let's again talk about the person who's trying to enter the drive-through, or sitting at home and thinking of something to eat, right? Which is me. Let's say I thinking of like, hey, I should get something to eat. There's three now. There's three options, right? There's McDonald's, there's Chick-fil-A, and then there's maybe two restaurants, like one casual dining place, which or like a cafe or whatever kind of establishment that's a little high up market that you serve. And I need to make that decision. And of course, there's a fourth option, which is order from home. Like, I'm just gonna get a delivery person on either DoorDash or whatever, depending on which country my listener is from, whichever online delivery platform they have up there, or maybe they call a restaurant. They have all these options, right? I have all these options, which is great for me. Um, what can Synq3, who serves different customers, what can Synq3 do to get me to call or to get me, off my ass to join to go to that restaurant versus the next guy?
Well, let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's go back to the beginning.
yeah,
The iconic figure Ray Kroc, a multi-mixer salesman who started McDonald's. He
yeah,
said you need three things: quality, service, and value. I
yeah.
would say in today's environment, I'm sorry, uh, quality, service, and cleanliness.
Okay,
Quality,
okay.
service, and cleanliness. I'm superimposing myself on Ray Kroc. I'm not Ray Kroc. Okay, quality, service, and cleanliness. I would add, Steve Bigari would add, convenience and value. Those two things
quality
are
service, quality service, cleanliness.
cleanliness,
Conven-
convenience, and value. Those
okay,
are the things, these are the currency, convenience and value are the currency that everybody's got to have. It's a greens fee, as it were, to compete in today's environment. Then they're going to notice your quality, they're going to notice your products. But there's nothing convenient about a line. There's nothing convenient about something that's ridiculously expensive. So you
yeah,
have to play in that space too. The beauty is the advent of digital has allowed us
okay,
to take advantage of those things. So let me
okay,
talk through an entire transaction
yeah,
and just highlight the parts that we focus on
yeah,
because I look at the world from the eyes of the guest. This is Aman calling for
I'm,
takeout
yeah,
or pulling up at a speaker. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
So the first thing I want to do is remember that for you, this is lunch.
mm,
Okay. See, it can't be complicated. We can't ask you to do things that are unnatural. So
okay,
we have to leverage all the tools in our digital tool bag to teach you about the benefits of digital. These include, okay, because I'm a voice guy, people think that I don't value online and mobile. Those are staples. You have to have a great, every restaurant has to have a great online and mobile presence. This is
yeah,
the environment. This is
okay.
the marketplace today. Online and mobile are key. Yet you have to be able to teach them
So
at,
you mean a mobile app?
yes.
Okay, so I need a mobile app for McDonald's. So or McDonald's needs
Everybody,
to have their own app, and then the DoorDash and the all these food delivery apps. Sorry for mentioning DoorDash. Maybe I'll cut that out. But there are all these food delivery apps which kind of what is it? Congregate all these different menus. That is one app, right? So what?
yeah,
And
I'm not
then
focusing at all on the aggregators today.
okay,
They have a role in the ecosystem. I'm focusing on the operators, not
okay,
the
awesome.
aggregators.
I see.
I'm an operator.
Yeah.
So the operator wants to appeal to a mod.
Okay.
So they start with a digital platform. You have to have. It is greens fee to have a mobile and online presence. That's where people are going to find you. That's where they're
Okay.
going to learn about you. That's where they're going to begin the interaction with you. Now, if they choose to call you or appear at your speaker, then you can use that experience to teach them about your digital and online presence. So, for example, the first time you come, you're a stranger. You would be greeted on the phone or over the speaker with, "Hi, welcome to blank. What can I get started for you?" You make your order. That comes with an appropriate general upsell. It's very clear what you need to do next. Please do this. We talk to you. Someone talks to you. Teaching almost always involves talking. That's why I've chose the voice space
Hmm.
because the transformation of this industry is going to begin and end with teaching.
Yeah.
And unless somebody invents a new way to communicate, talking is key in that. Now,
Yeah.
that helps to get you through easily, frictionlessly, all those things we talked about earlier, put in unison, make a better experience for you today. Now, when you leave, we can use the receipt, a text, an email, another digital correspondence to tether you, to tie you to a relationship. The stickiest of those is text, which is where we're focusing a lot of our stuff. So we
I
would
see.
focus on the phone or the speaker. We would greet you first. Remember, we want to remove the mundane. We want to remove the repeat. So I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to go to Aman's second visit.
Mm-hmm.
So now I tell you, um, hey, Amon, with your permission, I'm going to text you a receipt. And you say, sure. I text it to you. You open that receipt, and it says reorder conveniently here.
Okay.
Boy, does that seem simple. I have to eat 1,100 times a year. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
big guy. I got to
Yeah.
keep all this going.
Mm-hmm.
So how easy is that for me to use that again? So you hit the button. You're a much smaller guy than I am, but I still think you got to eat over 1,000 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you touch that button, and now it gives you several digital choices. You can order online, mobile. You can text the order in. You can call it in. So today you hit the call button.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You're greeted by automation that says, "Hi, Amon, welcome back. Last time you had this, this, and this. Do you want that again?" Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else I can get for you? Yeah, I'd like to add that cheesecake. I like that so much. Great choice. Put that
So
on
you
your
want
visa.
so you want to prompt the customer towards buying what they've already eaten.
Well, that's just one example. So
Okay, I see.
let me use a completely different example.
Okay,
In this case, we've invited that. So
I see.
let's walk through this one and then get to a third one. So
Yeah,
the second time you do that, in voice or text, you get that reorder, and it's easy. You then get prompted, can I follow you to make sure that your food is prepared just in time for your arrival? If you say no, you don't like this big brother stuff, that's
yeah,
fine. We're just going to tell you once you get here, you're going to have to wait a couple of minutes because we're not starting your food till you get here.
yeah,
But you're comfortable with technology. You're a technology guy. So you say yes. So now we track you and we know when you're going to arrive. Now you hit that speaker and we say, hi, Amon, welcome back. Please pull forward. There's nothing. There's no foreplay. There's just a smiling, happy, productive employee sticking a bag out the window saying,
yeah,
hi, Amon, come on down, buddy.
yeah,
Here you go.
yeah.
So the third time you hit that button because it was so good the last time, it was glorious. But you got your friends and family with you. So now you want to place a big order.
I see.
So you call it in and you say, as soon as you hit it, hey, Amon, you want your same food? No. Well, what would you like? I'd
I
like
see.
to talk to a person.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Hi, Amon, welcome back. Would you like to start with what you ordered last time? Yes, because I'm in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Honey, what do you want? Son, what do you want? Friend, what do you want? Add
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff up. Okay, will you be visiting the same this I see you called this restaurant. Will you be visiting that again? Yes. You'd be there in about 10 minutes. Can I track you? Yes. Now, you don't want to go. You want to sit inside and eat. You don't
Yeah.
want to go through the drive through. You're with friends and family, but you're off to a soccer match or something else, and you don't want to wait. So
Mm-hmm.
you place that order, and then you tell them you'll be picking up inside. And
Yeah.
as soon as you hit the parking lot, the Geo sends you a text. I see you're here. It tells the staff, I see you're here. They put your drinks on the table. You walk through the door. They see it's you. Hi,
Mm-hmm.
Aman. Oh, you're a VIP. You're a VIP in any restaurant you enter into. Hi,
Yeah.
Aman. Welcome. What does your family think? What do your friends think? You're a big deal. You talk about a differentiator. Now, as soon as you sit down, your food comes. It's hot, fresh, prepared just for you.
Yeah.
High quality. The manager's right there talking to you. You have a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great value. That's a force multiplier. So now you're going to come back, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
now you're a VIP on every visit, no matter what it is, and you make it to the soccer match on time. That's convenient and it has great value. But
Mm-hmm.
without those core Ray Kroc components, the quality, the service redefined, a clean environment,
Mm-hmm.
the foundation is weak.
I see. So with this one, I'm gonna keep going back to being pretending to be the business guy, and I'm just gonna keep talking about the margins again and again, right? So with this one, number one, so first you need to have, for this to work, right? The first thing is, ideally you want to have a mobile app so you can track the person, right? If you don't have a mobile app, let's say you're a smaller chain, what do you do? What do they use? How can the Synq3 help them?
We don't do that, but we have many technology providers who can. Radius, Blue Dot. there's a bunch of people who are in that space that we connect to. There are
And what do
also
they do?
locker manufacturers for convenience. So there's geo tracking that can be used. There's Bluetooth tracking that can be used. This little bad boy can be our friends at Acrylic have a wonderful gadget that you can place anywhere to track your Bluetooth. Again, if the guest is comfortable with that, and if they're not, you just teach them. You text them a link that says hit this link when you're here. So there's
Mm.
the technology adverse. I would just remind the technology adverse that on your way down to that restaurant, you have been filmed by thousands of cameras. Your conversations have been listened to. So if you want to feel better, you can
Mhm.
opt out of all this technology, but it's really the technology that provides the convenience. And now with the advent of APIs and SDKs, you can embed an SDK for that service into anything, into any
Yeah, yeah,
phone.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's multiple ways to achieve that. You have really the ordering. Think of the steps.
yeah.
You have the ordering, and the underlying data that's important. You have the payment and the underlying data that's important. You have the production and the timing of that,
Yeah.
the sequencing of the arrival with the production. And all of those things involve some form of geolocation that can be done by the car, the phone, all these tools working in concert with each other to eliminate friction, reduce costs, and more importantly, what have we done? We've taken your one random visit to my restaurant, to my single restaurant, and we've turned it into three. The first one is the one you expected. The second one is the one that you came more frequently because it was so easy. And the third one, you said, hey, gang, well, you got to see this.
Yeah.
I've got, think about the P&L. Let's go
Mm.
back to the P&L because everything begins and ends with the P&L.
Yeah, yeah,
Revenue is the denominator.
yeah, yeah.
We're all
That
about
makes a lot of
driving
sense.
revenue in Synq3, man. All about driving revenue.
That makes sense. So now finally we get into actually talking about Sync 3 and your journey a little bit, maybe because I know we're short on time. So let's talk about your customer. Like, who do you currently serve? How is your particular customer segment evolving? Who do you work with? Who are you trying to work with? What's on the plan for Sync 3?
We serve a host of marquee national brands,
Okay.
and unfortunately today, when you talk about that independent operator, we can't really help them. But I'm hopeful that some breakthroughs. My chief product officer Jeff Lucas is brilliant, and he's got some things in the hopper I'm not going to talk about, but we could extend this. For now, I'm going to focus on our marquee clients.
Yeah.
We enjoy direct relationships with 30 plus of the finest restaurant brands in the world. They range from fast food to
Mhm.
fast, what you would call QSR, to fast casual to casual dining and above. And certainly pizza,
What were
phone
those
ordering.
again? I'm sorry. What was those again? So can you give us the categorization again?
So think about what you talked about, what you called QSR, quick serve.
Okay. Quick service. Okay,
And
that's
then
fast food.
Right, and
McDonald's.
then you have a fast casual dining establishment.
Okay.
These are all modeled after the great leader in this segment is Chipotle,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And the barbecue
so
places, the small barbecue joints, and all those
they're
are
all
in that
kind of
fast
modeled
casual.
after
Yeah.
that. It can be a sit down experience, but it's fast.
Yeah.
And then you have the casual dining, our great brands like Applebee's, right?
Yeah.
Um, where it's an elevated level of experience, but
Yeah.
the convenience built into that,
Yeah.
and then beyond.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
convenience is important even in higher end restaurants, but when you
Yeah.
get into Michelin, it's less important. It's more
Yeah.
about experience.
Yeah.
And so Sync3 focuses really on the front end of that, the voice interaction with the guest, either via phone, over the speaker. And we always begin with automation,
I
always.
see.
Now, a core philosophy of mine is experience above all. Experience above all. So
Mm.
I'm going to assume that you're visiting my restaurant largely for the convenience up front. Hi,
Mm.
Aman, welcome back. Last time you had this, you want that again? No. What would you like? I'd like to talk to a person. Awesome. I'm not going to fight you.
Yeah.
So then I send you a person, but that person is equipped with the same technology. That partial cart,
Yeah.
that whatever, it's in front of them. Your previous order history is in front of them, so they know about you. When we started this, we actually had customers say, "Wait, how did you know that?" And we'd say,
Hmm.
"Well, it's an interesting technology that you might know. We, it's called caller ID." And people would, one in a thousand would say, "That's creepy, turn it off." And we'd literally put a note in the field that says, "A man wants to be treated like a stranger." So
Yeah.
the next time you'd call back, we'd say, "Hi, welcome to blank. What can I get for you?" We knew that you were a sucker for whatever you were a sucker for, and we could use that in the transaction. I could sell you cheesecake anytime.
Yeah.
Um, but we hide that technology. Now, I
Mm.
think that that's a case where we give a richer experience because the person talking to you knows about you in the background. So, all those things fit together in the ordering and payment experience that we focus in. We're now extending that into text ordering, text payment, chat ordering within the app. Remember, everything I do begins and ends with the brands. So, I
Yeah.
serve those brands. They are my customers. I'm the voice of, face of, um, technology behind those brands. And I use their existing tools. I don't
Mm.
sell them a bunch of technology. I
Yeah.
use their existing tools, infrastructure, online, mobile, APIs,
Yep.
SDKs,
Yep.
integrate seamlessly into those with the most powerful teaching tool on the planet, talking.
Yeah. And do you still operate like? Do you handle the outsourcing of the order, like the call center part as well at Sync3? Is that what you still
Yeah,
do?
so we have our own internal agents.
Okay.
We also connect directly with partners of ours across the globe, so we take calls everywhere. We've taken calls in Colombia, South Africa,
Mm.
all so we can network all those things together with the most
Yep.
sophisticated telephony infrastructure on earth. We can also do that in a drive-through speaker, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, uh, totally lost my train of thought there.
Oh,
Sorry.
so yeah, yeah. Like so we were talking about that. You work with the big brands and you offer them the call center, outsourcing as well, not just the voice technology and the
Right.
data management.
Great, thank you. The third component of that I had was sometimes they have their own. They have their own
Yeah.
internal call center. Our big pizza clients have their own internal call centers.
Mm.
I don't want to be in the call center business. I want to be
Yeah.
in the technology business. So
Yeah.
I do that. I offer that a completely bundled service with wonderful Sync3 employees
Mm.
that are all in the U.S. All in the U.S.
Mm. Mm.
And they sit behind that automation to answer it. And then I use wherever the customer wants to go to involve them in that ecosystem anywhere on the globe
Yeah.
in their own call centers. Frankly, I'd rather just be the front end and the automation behind all
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But, but
Yeah.
we're happy to we serve people, so we're happy to give them whatever they need.
Actually makes sense. So there's one kind of customer which is they already have their customer they already have their customer support, their call centers and everything, and you just become a technology as a service or a software as a service provider. That's of course the most profitable, the best business to be in because you have to have like hundreds of employees and be a BPO. But then of course you understand that not everybody is at that along that journey at different points, and so you kind of meet them where they are with whether they need workforce, they need like outsourcing, whatever they need, they can come to you and you kind of walk them through that whole process, right?
Come on, you becoming a walking commercial for Sync 3. We say this all the time. We meet our clients and our guests where they are and take them where they want to go. And I can tell you where they want to go is better, cheaper, faster than what it was in the past.
Yeah, and the big thing, the big caveat here, in a way, for people who are listening, is it all begins with the app. So Sync3 works with established brands who usually have their own app, whether it's like Taco Bell app or Chipotle app or whatever McDonald's app that these people have, and so he provides the magic once you download the app based on their brand marketing, right?
Right.
Uh,
And everything that underlies that app, specifically the APIs that we can communicate directly to
yeah.
the restaurant point of sale and therefore directly to you. I can communicate to you across the globe So I can communicate directly to the kitchen by having that integration, that roadmap, as it were, to your technology suite.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much for giving us a full overview and being so open and being so generous with giving us the details, right, on this kind of opaque industry. I mean, I personally feel that if somebody is not in the restaurant business, it looks and seems like a very different business than if you are in the restaurant business. And
Yes.
although that's true for most industries, like which is why I had this podcast where I kind of like pull back the curtain on different industries. Even without that, I think the restaurant business is one of the most misunderstood industries as a whole. Would you? I don't know how you feel about that with people. You have friends who don't understand the restaurant business, right?
Yes, and honestly, I think that that's okay. I mean, we're all consumers of restaurants, so
Yeah.
it's okay that to you it's just lunch, right? And I want to make that easy for you because you don't want to understand all that, all the hard work and all the investment that it takes to deliver this. You just want that wonderful, rich experience, and I think that's the beauty of it. Now, for people who are interested in it, it's being reshaped by technology today in the fastest time I've ever seen in the history. And I've been doing this for over 30 years. It's an amazing time with unparalleled opportunity. But, where there's no risk, there's no reward. So this was a Ray Kroc, too. There's
Yeah.
nothing gained by walking a tightrope laid flat on the floor. So
Yeah.
we got to get up off the ground and take some risks, but the future is very bright for the brave.
Awesome. And so, one final question that I have recently started asking: who's the funniest member of your team?
Oh gosh, that's like, dude, that's like asking me which of my five kids are my favorite.
Oh,
I
really?
can't.
You have like usually there's always this one joker in the company, right? Who makes the best
No, no,
jokes and
no,
stuff.
man. I have a bunch of jokers. I have my team is some of the most brilliant people on earth. I could talk about all of them
Yeah.
all day, every day. But if I single out one, it's going to be like telling you which of the five kids I really love the most. I'm not
Okay.
going to fall for it.
I see. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steve. Great to have you here.
Thank you.